Hey, what's up, y'all? It's that time of year again. Everything smells like cheap pumpkin ass. Spirit Halloweens are spawning across the map, and there's a crisp chill that can cut through even southern humidity like a freshly glazed turkey. I even have my pumpkin spice candle. Yes, pumpkin spice. So in honor of this, I decided to do, is this considered a horror movie? It's considered a thriller suspense. Close enough. I also have a video planned for American Horror Stories. The next season is coming up if you guys are interested in that. So, what is Blink Twice? Blink Twice is a 2024 psychological thriller movie by Zoe Kravitz and E.T. Feigenbaum. When tech billionaire Slater King meets cocktail waitress Frida at his fundraising gala, he invites her to join him and his friends on a dream vacation on this private island. As strange things start to happen, Frida questions her reality. Which is, I guess, a way that you can describe this movie. Just for a little bit of context, I went into the theater with my friend into this completely blind, and I love watching movies kind of like that. I love going into them blind. Like, it's like a Russian roulette. You can either get like a real good diamond or a flaming bag of shit. And I think this movie is good. I left the theater with like several thoughts and questions that I had in my swirling around in my brain noggin area, and that's why I'm here to yap about it to you guys. But yeah, now that I've given a little bit of context, I recommend watching this movie because I'm going to spoil pretty much everything. But yeah, welcome back to my channel. I'm Hazel. Let's get right into this. The movie starts with a trigger warning, and I'll also state it here, trigger warning for essay. So we start off with this pretty queasy tone with distorted music, visuals, and a lizard that essentially foreshadows the island the bulk of this movie takes place at. Here's where we're introduced to our main character Frida and her best friend slash roommate Jess. We see Frida scrolling through social media, don't ask me which one, because I have no idea, they all look the same at this point. And something that may be a small detail, I have no idea, but she seems scrolling through normal content mixed with violent videos, which could play on the idea that we later see in the movie with scenes like this with violence that comes and goes in our minds despite how horrifying it is. Anyways, we essentially see this video that is essentially kind of going in on the idea of the YouTuber celebrity influencer apology with this tech guru billionaire and the pain, the thorn in my ass, Slater King. He's this billionaire tech mogul and essentially the owner and founder of this thing called King Tech. And we eventually find out that he owns his own island where he goes on to take accountability by living his best life on a private island. Suffice it to say, he's not worried about paying any bills, and he's essentially apologizing for abuse of power at this point, which tech billionaire... Okay. So what the beginning of this movie sets up is that essentially the main lover boy, Slater King, is essentially rich and wealthy and living his best life. Meanwhile, Frida is impoverished, very destitute, if you will, and is in need of a vacation, right? So Frida is working this event for Slater King and his fellow pole riders. I meant like polar... Okay, moving on. And her boss essentially tells her that at a similar event last year that she essentially did too much for a lowly, poverty-stricken wench. And with that advice, she proceeds to embarrass the shit out of herself. At this event, Frida has a particular fascination for our bald-headed savior. Yeah, so the girls get glammed up and then they hit the floor. And by hit the floor, I mean... Small side note. Do I have any viewers out there that have social anxiety too? When you look at scenes like this, is it also hard to watch? Like really hard to watch more than some of these gory scenes that come up later? Like, so who proceeds to pull her back up and fix her shit Cinderella style? Baldy's Basics, yes, that's correct. And while introducing Frida to his therapist, this exchange happens.
Very nice to meet you.
Blink twice and I'm in danger.
Well, maybe not. Let's not answer that one, right?
This is why you never trust a bald man. His own hair didn't even trust him, so why are you? Anyway, so Frida and Jess are given this tour through his friend group that's essentially a bunch of people that we'll later see on the island. If I'm being honest, a lot of these people blend together. So I guess I'll mention them as like their importance creeps up. Except this lady right here. This right here is Sarah.
Frida, Sarah, Frida.
Hi. Oh, hi. Cute nails. Thank you.
I know. Just hold that thought. Just hold on just one moment. Hold on to your box of briefs. We can tell that there's some tension between Sarah and... I keep wanting to call him Ethan Slater. Slater, by proxy, there's some tension between Sarah and Frida. Oh girl, these names. A thing to note throughout this movie, especially within this scene and these scenes, is that there's a lot of subtle foreshadowing and I guess not so subtle foreshadowing. So just keep that sloshing around in your noggin. So there's this montage of the people all getting closer by the time the event ends. So Frida and Jess are talking, and then Ethan Slater goes and invites them out to his private island. So of course they all fly out there to this beautiful island, and they essentially have to give up their phones. Well, not have to, I guess, but have to give up their phones, which Jess is a lot more apprehensive of than Frida is. I haven't touched on it much, but I actually really like the dynamic in acting between Jess and Frida. I think both women did fantastic in their roles and seemed like genuine friends. Now, originally I wasn't too keen on Jess and her character, just because I feel like we've seen so many like of that archetype of like that kind of quirky, why are they always blonde? Quirky blonde best friend character to the main character. Like I feel like we've seen that a lot recently. Not that it's like a bad trope or anything, but we've just seen it a lot. But I do really like Jess as a character. They all take a pic where we get the title card in this cool split-second transition as the camera flash goes off. Frida and Jess take a moment to look at their housing and get settled in. Frida finds this bottle of perfume called Desideria, which she then proceeds to spray all over herself, right? Keep this in mind. We also get this worker lady who I don't know if we ever even really get her name. But she essentially works there. We see her periodically throughout the island, essentially either doing some type of maintenance, upkeep, or killing off an island that's populated by snakes. Snakes are on the loose on this island, by the way. Just keep that in mind. She eventually feels our creepy old person who knows more about what's going on, but decides to stay vague because, you know, gotta keep the plot going. She calls for a red rabbit while stroking her face, which we'll find out what that means later, but that's pretty much all she ever really says to her. Which, as you'd expect, this creeps her out. But yeah, we get some moments of characters vibing by the pool and chilling, and this is fascinating because this is one of the first times that we've really seen the female characters really start to vibe together, which definitely plays into the plot line later in the story. We see a few scenes with the girls like Camila, and I'm gonna call her Blunt Queen. I don't remember what her name is, but as she calls herself the Fat Blunt Queen, so I'm gonna call her Blunt Queen. Along with a bunch of the guys, like I said, the guys all blend together. To be fair, Camila and old Blunt Queen aren't really that prominent either, and they kind of blur together a little bit, but the guys really kind of blur together for me. Like, I'd be forgetting who was actually on screen half the time. So I'm gonna just start calling people by their quirks that I've noticed about themselves. This is Blunt Queen. This is Four Fingers. We got comedic relief. Photographer / culinary dude, those two, I don't even know if they're separate characters, they blend together for me. This is Fro and Twink, along with, of course, Slater, Frida, Jess, and Sarah. Well, basically, we just see them all chilling by the pool, smoking, drinking, and having fun. We also find out in this scene that Sarah used to be on a show called Hot Survivor Babes for about 8 seasons until they canceled it, I'm assuming. Which, as you'd expect, definitely does come in later in the movie. She really should have just threw that coconut at his big ass head and changed the trajectory of everyone's life for the better. He shows her a bit more of the island, where they talk about therapy and their ideas and thoughts on it. Frida essentially calls it all bullshit. Slater essentially kind of thinks the same thing, except he's doing trauma therapy, which is essentially touching on repressed memories. Now this is momentarily interrupted by Mama Slater essentially dropping these red bags that both the Mama and Slater are suspiciously adamant that Frida doesn't need to help with picking them up. So later that night, Frida and Jess attend this dinner with all the people on the island. They congratulate Camila for finalizing the sales for her astrology app. I think this might be the only time that I ever really address this man. This man right here. He makes this stupid ass interjection and essentially projects his self-insecurities and throws the whole vibe of the party off. I've seen this dude in other things before, and I don't remember liking his characters there either, because I feel like he plays, at least from what I've seen, a lot of the same characters archetype. And I'm being honest, I'm not really a fan of that. Like also that dude, I don't remember his name, but he's like the popular comedic actor. He plays, I think, that priest or whatever in that one Paranormal Activity movie. He played this one dude from Final Destination 5. And I think he was in that stupid dumbass like phone app thing that could kill you movie, whatever. And he pretty much plays the same character in all three of those movies. I don't know, I just really don't like this kind of character archetype, if I'm being honest, in media. So I will be actively ignoring him for the rest of the movie. Anyways, more camaraderie until this dude pulls out psilocybin and MDMA drops, right? When I tell you, everybody in that bitch was flying. Flying for the rest of the night. So the next morning, everyone's by the pool again, and certain people are starting to notice certain things that are like subtly off. Frida notices the staff lady killing snakes again and staring at her. Four Fingers and the Blunt Queen questioning his missing finger, which his response is that one Fight Club quit. And for a bit, we get some scenes that, you know, implies time-lapse a few days or however long has passed by, and it kind of keeps the same routine, you know, everybody after dinner essentially takes MDMA, psilocybin drops, and trips out for the rest of the night. Pictures of everybody relaxing and getting closer. We also get this scene. He's going to hell. He's burning in sulfur and brimstone, by the way. I guess what the highlight about this montage is that, one, we see slight things are suddenly starting to appear or disappear, or things just kind of being there without reason. And two, Slater takes note of and compliments the perfume that Frida's wearing. So he leaves his vape pen with her one day, and on her way to return that back to his main lodge where I guess he resides at, she comes across his little merry band of cohorts. Dude from the gala, other dude with glasses. It's not ringing any bells. You also start to see some people's items going missing, like Chef Dude's special knife and Jess's lighter. While laughing with Slater, Frida essentially kind of says to herself, you know, something bad is about to happen. And when questioned, she's just like, when things are good, that always is when something bad happens, which that sounds like what therapy is for. But I get your point. I get what you're trying to say. In this scene, she starts questioning how long she's been there, when they're gonna leave, which she kind of plays off and doesn't really give her a real answer. And later that night, they of course have that extravagant dinner and they get high. They're all dancing around having fun, right, until we hear Jess screaming. She starts screaming that something bit her, and as we see, it is a snake. And everybody starts panicking. Everybody starts panicking, except for Slater. Except for Slater, who proceeds to beat the shit out of it with a bottle. I'm sorry, it's not funny, but like... So as you'd expect, Jess isn't really having fun anymore. Jess has actually been, throughout the course of this movie, on this island. She has been questioning things more often, more calling things out for being culty or kind of just weird or off. And here in this scene, she's just like, I feel weird, and she feels scared and she wants to go home. Until Frida essentially guilt trips her about, oh, you know, this is like, I get you, but like, this is such a huge opportunity. Like, you know, like, we don't get this type of thing often, and I have this connection with this rich billionaire. Could you like be a real friend for like 5 minutes? I actually really like Jess a lot more as a character than I thought I was going to. I think she has a really fun and really good like line delivery. She's like the main one at this point, really showing any apprehension or just kind of questioning what's going on around her, but still wanting to be a good friend for her best friend. Which makes it really funny when after this she completely disappears from the story. Yeah, last we see of her, she's staring at the fire, just kind of blankly staring at it with this nosebleed after the snake bite, right? Which we'll talk about later. So Frida finds one of the bags that Mama Slater was holding in the middle of the forest, just sitting there, I guess, whatever. She finds a shack that's like nearby, and what she finds is she sees a collection, a boudoir of crimson goodie bags. And she comes across the old lady again, and the old lady offers Frida what Frida thinks is alcohol, so they both sip, right? Wanna know what it actually is? You wanna know what it actually is? It's a bottle of snake venom. Yeah, and they're both just sipping on it. Like, whoa. We've been getting a few scenes during the montages of the women dressed in these robes, essentially running, and one of them starts questioning, you know, why are we running? Again, that foreshadowing, right? Spliced with random cuts of one of them running, Slater's face, and Jess telling Frida to hide the knife. which we see the next morning, Frida has a nosebleed similar to Jess after she got the snake bite. At breakfast the next morning, we see how off the girls seem to be. Blunt Queen not knowing why she has bangs. Girl, I don't know either. Take it off. Sarah and Frida essentially having these kind of like hangover-like effects, seeming just kind of very withdrawn, very kind of like in their heads, kind of in a daze. Lucas, the twink, remember, also wakes up with a black eye that he can't explain.
The guys go onto a boating trip while the girls recover with a face mask by the pool. Frida questions them about where Jess is, and they have no idea who she's talking about. She runs to Jess's room just to see the room that she would have been in. It looks like it hasn't been lived in, just is nowhere to be seen. Frida at this point feels like she's in a daze, trying to get herself to fully wake up, till she finds the knife that she and Jess hid. So Sarah knocks on Frida's door, where she sees the lighter that they've been using that has Jess's name on it. She and Frida talk about how they feel like they're forgetting a lot of stuff, including just being there in the first place and how long they've even been there. They have bruises and scars they can't explain. They finally begin to process the ludicrousness of getting on a random billionaire's private plane to a secluded island with a bunch of random strangers. Which, yeah. So this is pretty much where Sarah begins to fill the role of Jess. Frida and her confide in the danger that they're in. They come to the conclusion that the men are making them forget, and Frida remembers Slater saying that forgetting is a gift. They head back to the shack with the red bags, just to find out that the perfume they've been wearing this whole time is in there. They decide against calling the cops because, I mean, as you can imagine, a couple of random women on billionaire Slater King's private island talking about they're doing horrible things to them that they can't even remember doesn't usually get the cops' gears in motion. Frida comes to the conclusion that the perfume causes them to forget somehow, and that the snake venom seems to potentially bring back some of their memories. Just like after the snake bit Jess and the snake venom that the old lady gave to Frida. They manage to convince the other girls, Fro, Blunt Queen, and even Slater's mom to drink it by mixing it with alcohol. As the boys head back from the boating trip, Frida and Sarah hatch a plan for Frida to go through Slater's main house and to go find their phones to call for help, while Sarah keeps the girls and the boys distracted. Sarah at this point is starting to feel pretty weird. Both her and Frida are getting nosebleeds, and it seems like they're really starting to recollect some of their memories. Sarah starts freaking out as the guys come back. She tries her best to keep up with this facade and warns Frida, who manages to find her phone and a box of photos that this guy has been taking, including guys being photographed with the red bags, including Slater, who comes creeping in while Frida hides. In this scene, we see the venom really starting to kick in, and Frida sees a memory of the guys on the island tying up all the girls, laying them face down, and yeah, doing what you expect. In the flashback, Slater says that Jess was bitten and knows too much, so they essentially killed her. I know. I know. I really wish they kept Jess around a little bit longer, but it's whatever, I guess. So Frida manages to slip out with the rest of the crew and talks to Sarah again. They both talk about how they're regaining their memories and how essentially they're going to have to keep up this happy, smiling facade till they can get help. So at the next dinner, we get this horrifying scene that was teased earlier of all the women on the island being SA'd, including Lucas. Which Frida seems to notice that Lucas is wearing the very same scent that all the girls on the island are wearing. I was of course horrified during this scene, but it seems like they were touching on the idea of the male victim, but I appreciated them for how they were seemingly handling Lucas's character at this point and the idea of the male victim. But I'm not really the biggest fan of how this was handled, but I'll touch on that later. We just get more dialogue about how the girls are connecting and talking about how women should look out for each other. Everyone starts dancing again, right? Sarah hides a wine opener. It's a useful tool that will help us later. This seems to be where the girls are really becoming aware of what happened. The girls start getting their memories back of being SA'd pretty much every night for God knows how long. And this is the moment where the girls start getting a little vengeful. Fro starts stabbing niggas, Blunt Queen chases down old dude and bashes his head in with the chessboard, and Sarah stabs her man with a bottle opener.
Unfortunately, not all the girls made it, as Blunt Queen was essentially shot before she was able to fully crush old dude's skull in, and Camilla essentially, Slater stepped on her throat until she just stopped breathing. Jesus. Frida's chased down through the forest by a man who almost ends up killing her if it wasn't for Sarah coming up and bashing his skull in with a rock. Yes, ma'am. The remaining guys, that mainly being Slater, the dude with skull fragments lodged in his brain, clinging to life like a roach, Sarah's old dude with like 3 new bloody wounds puncturing into his flesh, and Lucas, who doesn't really seem to understand what's going on or like anything actually. Frida and Slater's mom essentially meet in the bathroom, and she of course is one of the people who took the snake venom, so she's regaining all her memories right there. And this scene shows that you can't help everyone, because she starts choking the hell out of Frida, and it's essentially like, I want to forget, like, what they do is none of my business, like, I don't want to hear about none of that shit. Like, okay. And then she stabbed her. Like, what? Like, as she should. Like, Frida stabbed her as she should. And next we get this scene that I feel like really was a little bit of a wasted potential with this scene, because this is one of the few only scenes that really kind of like goes in on Lucas's mentality. Lucas is still trying to remember what he did or what happened, and we're told that he did nothing. As in nothing to help himself, nothing to help the girls, and apparently he didn't participate, but he didn't help them either. Which could be an interesting conversation, if this wasn't coming from the worst fucking human being that you've ever met in your life. In the next scene, Frida sees a photo of herself, which seems to have been taken with her on the island last year. Yes, she was on this island last year. So Frida and Sarah decide to go out and kill these men with I'm That Girl playing in the background. I know that's right. Unfortunately, the girls trick Lucas into opening the door, and then blasted the head off of him, which, to be fair, that shot was meant for Slater, but what that essentially means is that that's kind of the end of that whole arc with Lucas. I just feel like male victims of SA aren't really, I guess, was focused on as much, and not a lot of care is kind of put into them. So I think the idea of including like the male SA victim in this storyline is actually a really fascinating one, especially with the way that this intersects with queerness. I think this is a really interesting idea that they do nothing with. Which, if I'm being honest, I think that's one of my biggest critiques of this movie, is I feel like it presents this idea forward but doesn't do anything with it, and kind of ends the storyline rather abruptly. So Frida's pulled back in to Slater's place, and they end up having a squabble, which brings back memories of the moments on the island last year, which once again the girls are running from the men who are hunting them down and proceeding to SA them, which Slater catches onto the back of her robe and then drops her head onto a rock, which is where that scar comes from. So there was a conversation earlier with Slater and Frida, in which he asks her, where does she get that scar from? Mind you, he did it. This is why I say he's going to hell. He's going to burn. I hope you don't like ice, because you're not going to see much of that with where you're going. But we essentially see the opening shot in this scene with the lizard, and that kind of essentially is the view of Frida while she was, which I think makes the queasy, rather ominous kind of note that the story starts on with that shot all the more tense, so to speak. And we also find out that the reason that musty dude has a missing finger is because Frida bit it off while he was trying to essay her. Anyways, while Frida is tied up and trying to escape, Slater goes on this villain monologue, yapping on about forgiveness isn't real and yada yada, trauma, whatever, and forgetfulness. I don't know, I wasn't paying attention. He started talking about his life and his little sister, and I swear to God, I don't give a damn. Sarah tried to knock down the door by shooting at it, which, okay. So once they know that the gun has no more ammo, Slater then runs after Sarah, catches her, and brings her back. And as he's about to kill Sarah, he goes to hit his vape pen, and suddenly he can't remember what's going on. Yeah, so basically he's asking like what happened to everyone, why is everyone dead? And what happened is eventually he found out through the confusion that Frida ended up putting that perfume into his vape, and that's why he was coughing and gagging. So in his confusion, he knocks over a bunch of candles, setting the place ablaze, and then knocks himself out on a table. So therefore, Frida and Sarah are able to escape the burning house. Frida and Sarah essentially kind of just sit down and just like, what the hell just happened, kind of in a way. Come to find out, Frida was dragging a body that we didn't know who it was, and we would assume it would have been Sarah. But come to find out, the body that she was dragging was Slater's, which Sarah tells her, I hope you know what you're doing with that. Just be careful with that. And that's kind of the last we see of Sarah. Hope she gets to have that All-Stars season. But yeah, the last thing that we see of the movie is essentially, I think maybe next year, is essentially Slater having another one of these galas, and he goes on to present, who is it? His wife, Frida. Frida got that bob on, and she mean business. She apparently has this guy wrapped around her finger, and now she essentially kept him alive in order to, I guess, reap the benefits of still being associated with a billionaire. And like, she kind of essentially upped herself. She kind of upgraded herself in her life, and is essentially using the perfume herself on him whenever he, I guess, gets like ornery. End of movie. Yeah, that was definitely an interesting watch. Like I said, not very like horror, I guess, but like more so like thriller, suspense kind of in a way. Like I said, my biggest problems, I guess, were how they handled the whole Lucas situation. I would say I do wish Camila and Bangs, or Blunt Queen, had more like, they had character. Like they definitely had their own character, but they weren't really prominent much at all, to where they kind of like blended in together compared to people like Sarah or Frida or hell, even the mom. Me personally, I think Slater should have be rotting in hell right now, in the deepest pits of it. But whatever. And I guess good for her, but I do like kind of wonder, I mean, he can kind of flip that on her at any point, right? It's like, I'm sure he knows that, you know, he's held captive, or in a sense that I feel like he can just flip that around on her and then make her the victim again. I guess that insinuates that he's not as like aggressive as he was before. I have no idea. I also wish we could have seen more of Frida's like emotional hangover, with kind of essentially the last time that she even remembers engaging with her best friend was essentially like her gaslighting her and emotionally like blackmailing her, for lack of better words. Like I wish we got some more scenes, or like thoughts, feelings when it comes to Frida and like her best friend. Like she brought her best friend to a private island and she died. Like I wish we could have seen more of like how Frida really feels about that. Like we got a scene of her crying when she realizes that, you know, she's dead, but like I wish we got a little bit more of that. But yeah, other than that, I think this is a pretty good movie. Like it was definitely enjoyable to watch. The 2 times that I have so far. But yeah, let me know down in the comments down below what you guys think of the movie. Do you like it? Do you agree with any of the points that I presented, especially about my critiques of this film? Do you not agree with it? Do you have any, you know, critiques of yourself that, you know, I didn't mention in this video? Or any things that kind of just stood out to you? Like I think the cinematography and the visual aspect of this is really good. Like I think the acting is like very, very good in this movie. And even some of the background characters are pretty enjoyable. But yeah, that's pretty much my thoughts about this movie. I have something very special coming up this month. I hope y'all will be very excited for that as well as Ryan Murphy and his productions. But yeah, if you'd like to follow me on social media, I have a link down below and at the top of the screen. Thank you so much for watching. If you indeed still are, I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.